Welcome to A Living History of Bronxville. I'm Marcia Lee. For the last several months, we've been interviewing people who have been involved in volunteer organizations in this community. And today we're very fortunate to have with us two people who have been involved with the Maxwell Institute for many years. They're Charlene Carter. Welcome, Charlene.
Thank you.
And Maureen Barton. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
To kick this off, I think first we need to let everybody know a little bit about what the Maxwell Institute is. So, Maureen, could you just jump in and tell us a little bit about the Maxwell?
Maxwell Institute provides counseling services for chemically dependent individuals and their families or significant others.
Right, for drug addicted people, yeah.
Substance abuse.
Substance abuse.
And it also has a very strong and active educational program, which provides information to the community to help all members of the community makes healthy choices.
Right. Have you done anything in the Bronxville school system or any of the school systems here in the Eastchester area?
There have been a number of programs that have been coordinated with different schools in the community, including Bronxville.
Right. And you have now both inpatient and outpatient services, is that correct? Or
well, as we are part of St. Vincents.
Right.
And being part of St. Vincents, we can arrange for inpatient services.
Right.
And that's provided at St. Vincent's Harrison Hospital, the hospital in Harrison.
Right.
Maxwell itself focuses its services on outpatient.
On outpatient. And if they need referral, then it goes to
Yes.
St. Vincent's. Okay. Now we're going to stop just for a second, back up, and let people get to know who the two of you are. First, I thought it was important to let them know what Maxwell Institute is. But Charlene, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself? Where do you hail from?
Well,
and how long have you been here in Bronxville? And why in the world did you get involved in the Maxwell Institute?
Well, I was born in Kentucky, raised in Texas. Married my husband, and we moved.
Who is John?
John McCarter.
Right.
We moved to New York, and then in New York City. Then in 1967, I decided I wanted to raise the children in a town, a nice town.
There are a number of us that felt the same way.
And we found a gym, and so we moved to Bronxville in 1967, and we've raised two children in the Bronxville school, and we have raised two grandchildren in the Bronxville school.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And we still have one grandchild who will be a senior next year.
In the school?
In the school.
That's great. And Maureen, how about you? Where are you from?
I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I came to New York right out of college, and I met my husband there, and we followed...
Who is Bill Barton, who many of us know and love.
He'll appreciate that.
From afar.
And followed the very same pattern that Charlene followed. We wanted to have a family, and we wanted to move out to a community that could offer a wonderful atmosphere to raise a child.
Yeah.
And so we selected Bronxville.
Well,
and that was in 1982.
Almost 20 years ago.
Almost 20 years ago.
Which is about the time, I hear tell, that the Maxwell Institute was begun. Maybe, Charlene, you could just tell us a little bit about the founding of the Maxwell Institute.
Actually, it began in 1980. Ruth Maxwell gathered a group of people together. This was a couple of years before I came along. Mm-hmm. And she said she had been to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, and had taken, she was an alcoholism counselor in New York, but she had taken this course at the Johnson Institute. And so she called her counseling friends together, and she said, how would you like to start an intervention center?
An intervention center.
Yes,
that's one of the first.
So that's what it was.
First in the.
And it was the first in the tri-state area.
Yeah.
And
we think of intervention these days as something very common, and we understand it. But it was
in those days it was brand new.
Very avant-garde. Yeah, you let them sort of bottom out before you touched them before then, right? Yeah.
And so that's what it was in the very beginning. It was an intervention center with this group of people that worked with Ruth. And then Ruth was this very, very dynamic person with wonderful ideas, and she began to start the education programs. and she had wonderful seminars, 5-day seminars.
Right here in the
in the Maxwell Institute, and she brought,
now, where was that located? Where were the seminars?
West Center
held?
Church to begin.
Right.
It was there until about 1986, I think.
And of course, the whole backdrop of this is that really problems with drugs really had hit the United States and the whole area here too. A serious problem.
It was the whole thing had gotten out of hand, and people didn't know what to do. They were, they didn't know where they could get help. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Berta Benz at one point, who started out with Ruth, and she said they used to take flyers out, in the very beginning, and they'd take them such places as over in the Lord and Taylor parking lot, and they'd put these flyers on cars to say, need help, for somebody in your family who has a drinking problem, and they'd put the name of the
Maxwell Institute on
the
it.
Maxwell Institute on it. This was,
this was aggressive.
Well, it was brand new. People didn't know,
Yeah.
It was brand new, this whole idea.
Right.
And so then Berta Benz was a friend of mine, and she introduced me to Ruth. And anybody that's ever known Ruth would know that you can't resist her enthusiasm and everything for a project like this. And
so one thing led to another.
One thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was on the board
and working hard.
Yeah.
And you've worked these many years for the Maxwell Institute.
I was on the board, and then I went off for a while, and then I went back on later. Uh-huh.
Now you started to tell us how it grew. I mean, first an education program.
Well, a lot of education
people could go
programs.
and attend seminars and things.
Well,
like
then they started aftercare. You do an intervention on a person, and then in those days the person always went away to treatment for 28 days, and when that person came back, well, they had to have aftercare for it, at least a year.
Right.
In addition to AA and all of that, they had.
You do work closely with AA, alcohol.
Oh, very closely, yeah.
It's part of the program.
It's part of the program.
It is, and
so I noticed that, like, for example, AA holds meetings at the Reformed Church and at a lot of the churches around here. So you work with these people to get them into those programs, do you?
Well, they have to go to AA. Yeah. If they're in the aftercare program.
But they get to select the location.
They get to select.
The location.
Yeah. Well, now I think you were telling me that around 1986, the Maxwell Institute did a big change and became a part of St. Vincent's Hospital.
That was actually in 1996.
96. Oh, I'm sorry.
86 is it had been at West. It was at West Center, and in 86 it moved to Asbury Methodist Church, and then in 93 the facilities moved to 125 Parkway Road
in Bronxville.
Right here in the village. Yeah.
Then a couple of years after that, because they needed that. If you remember, that's where the Avalon is right now.
Is it where the Avalon is located?
So we had to vacate those premises, and we're moved to our current location, which is in Tuckahoe. So could you explain the affiliation with St. Vincent's and how that works? St. Vincent's, we are actually part of St. Vincent's.
Of the hospital. In
Harrison.
Right.
And that St. Vincent's is part of St. Vincent's in Manhattan, which is part of the Catholic Healthcare Network.
Okay.
And being part of it, right now, the services that St. Vincent's offers, or any service within the Catholic Healthcare Network, are services that are accessible by Maxwell. So if you go to Maxwell, and Maxwell, in terms of its outpatient services, cannot service the patient, cannot help the patient. They have the entire network available to them that can. Yeah. And it's been, I think, a wonderful merger. St. Vincent's came in at a time when Maxwell was facing some very, very tough decisions in terms of the changing...
In terms of financing, too.
Finances, but, it's a changing... it's a changing environment in terms of small, independent institutions like Maxwell. Mm-hmm. Managed care had a dramatic effect on how you're able to charge for your services, how you're able to get any type of reimbursement. And you really have to join forces to continue. So it was, I think that Maxwell was the type of organization that St. Vincent's was seeking in terms of a satellite organization. But I think also for Maxwell, joining with St. Vincent's was very fortuitous, and I think it's been a good match.
And it was mutually beneficial, and it saved them both and filled the needs of both of them.
Exactly.
But I'm sure that now the local office is here in Tuckahoe, and so if anybody wanted to avail themselves of the services or get started anyway, they would go right here in Tuckahoe. Is that correct?
You could call over at Maxwell and indicate what type of service you may be looking for, what type of help that you seek.
Well, let's just say that, I have a problem in my family. I don't, but I mean, at least I don't know about it. But for the grace of God go I, of course. That I wanted to do something about a loved one that had a drug addiction problem. What would I do in order to use Maxwell? I mean, where would I go? How do I call? Call the center?
You call
Maxwell. You explain
here in Tuckahoe.
In Tuckahoe, and you explain the issue.
337. Do you know the telephone number there? I dialed it this morning.
6033.
Well,
I used to know it. Am I right? I still know it.
64.
337-6033.
337-6033.
That's why I'm a historian.
And so then they'll get in touch with
and you explain your particular situation, and I have to stress that all members who are either if they're staff or if they're one of the clinicians or counselors, they're bound by very, very strict confidentiality requirements. So you call them up, you tell them what your issues are, what type of help. They will match you up then, and the ladies who are in the front office at Maxwell they're wonderful. They've been there a long time, and they're very compassionate and understanding, and they will work to the best of their ability to find the help that you're seeking, whether it's at Maxwell or within the St. Vincent's network.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful to know. Now, I know with any organization, there's always a shortage of funds going around. I mean, what are the sources of funding for the Maxwell Institute? How's the Institute approached this?
That's an interesting question, because Maxwell Institute was one of the first organizations to get funding from the Community Fund.
From the Eastchester Community Fund.
From the Bronxville, Eastchester, Tuckahoe Community Fund.
Right,
yes,
right.
Yes. And I can remember back in the early 80s going in and making a presentation to the Community Fund with Ruth Maxwell. And they're still getting funding
from it.
From the
well, it's
Community
because
Fund.
the Institute plays such an important role here in the community.
Yeah. So that's
but I can imagine the combination of you and Ruth, those poor people listening didn't have a chance. It's a good thing there's anything else to contribute to.
Ruth didn't really need me. I'm just there. I was just there.
Charlotte, when you get
so
going,
dynamic.
you're quiet at first, but you're very effective. But
Maxwell
you also
has always been extremely grateful for that Community Fund support, because it was there even in times when they might have had other uses for the funds, but they've continued to support Maxwell, and I think we're very, very appreciative of that.
Yeah, and we're very fortunate they've continued it. You also do other forms of fundraising. I mean, you have, an annual, every other year you have a big event.
Right.
I'd love to tell you about the first one.
Tell us about the
because
first
that
one.
was fun.
Well, the others have been fun, too. I mean, I've been to some of them. And
they've all been fun, Ruth said, we've got to have more money here. We absolutely have to have a fundraiser. And so we sat down. At that point, I was the chairman, and we sat down in her office to try to determine what we were going to do. And she said, I want it to be wonderful, I want it to be fun, and I want people to want to come. And so it really was her idea to have a theater benefit. And then I said, well, if we're going to have them come to the theater, we need to tell them about Maxwell at the same time, so let's have a dinner beforehand. And so then she said, but how are we going to get from the dinner to the theater? And I said, well, we'll have to choose a spot that's within walking distance. That's all there is to it. And so we started putting together the first benefit. And
what was the play that you saw?
It was Neil Simon's Brighton Beach Memoirs. And then we tapped my husband to help out. and he was the first dinner chairman. And because we served the tri-state area, we were able to get corporations in on it. We were hoping to make $10,000 off of this event. And I said to Ruth, she insisted that we had to have filet mignon. And I said, you know, if we have chicken, we can make more money. And she said, no, my friends are coming. We're going to serve them filet mignon. So we did. And we were hoping to make $10,000, and we made $49,000.
Oh,
we had 350 people there at the very first one. And
you've been going great guns ever since.
They've been going, yeah, they really have. And I have to mention one name. Bob Naw, who's local here, was such a big help with that first benefit. I don't think we could have done it without him. He and my husband as the dinner chairman. It was, and that's the way it all started.
You made a lot of calls. Yeah, that's how it works. A successful fundraiser. Now, just before we go on, there have been, most of us would know if we've lived here any long length of time, the past presidents. Can you just refresh my memory who have been?
I'll start from the current one and go backward to the point that I know, and then maybe you can fill in after that. But the current chair of the advisory board is Dale Fraze.
And Dale's going to join us in just a second here.
And Dale, before Dale, Dale serves, her term is over this June. And she's been the chair for 2 years. Prior to that was Susan Voida, who was chair for 2 years. Prior to that, I was chair for a year. And then prior to that, Chuck Cook was chair for many, 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 many years.
He was chair for a long time.
A long time.
And Sherlyn, when were you chair?
I was chair back in 1982.
So you really were you were the founding chairman.
Well, no, actually, there was someone in there before me. She had her board put together when I went in.
Ruth
did.
Okay. So.
And I think I was the second one, and I can't really tell you who the first one was.
We'll think of it.
And then after I was chair, there was, I think his name, he was from some other locality. His name was Charlie Marsden. And then I went off the board and didn't keep up with things for a while. Okay. So I don't know.
You came back later.
Well,
obviously, it's drawn from wonderful volunteers in the community, and that's why it's continued to be such a great success. Now, we're going to halt this for just a second. Maureen is going to be leaving. Thank you, Maureen,
You're
for
welcome.
joining us.
Thank you.
And we're going to have Dale Fraze take her place. So, just a second, Dale will be here. We're back. And Dale, thank you for joining us, Dale Fraze. Can you just, first of all, like we did for Maureen and Sherlyn, tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got involved in the Institute?
I was born on Long Island, and I grew up in Long Island, and we were in New York City and decided the children needed some more grass, and so we...
Like all of us, we can't stand the cement anymore.
And we knew the Mahlers, and the Mahlers found us an apartment. In fact, the Mahlers introduced me to my husband, so and we met Dr. Hagedorn, principal of the elementary school, and we just fell in love with the community, and of course we knew the Carters.
Now you have just had a wedding in your family.
We did. I now have 2 sons and a wonderful daughter, Amazing Grace from Spartanburg, South Carolina.
That's wonderful. Well, what I'm going to do, Dale, because you have such a background in this, is there are quite a number of services that the Maxwell Institute offers, and I really don't think people really are familiar with all that they do. So I'm just going to go listing them, and bada bada bing. Would you just tell us very quickly a little bit about them? Okay, one of the main services is intensive outpatient day treatment. What is that all about?
I've just stopped drinking. I've decided that I really want to recover and I don't want to drink anymore, and I call Maxwell and I say I am committed, and for 9 hours a week plus there's a special intensive outpatient day treatment, and coupled with highly recommended AA meetings that I go into, and it's been found to be very, very successful.
Very successful.
Yes,
and helping that
because
person
it's so intensive.
who's finally stop drinking, to keep it going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, are they doing this? I'm not that connected with it now, but are they doing this in place of the 28-day hospitalization programs?
Yes.
And that's because of managed care?
And I'm glad you said that, because that is one of the great joys of the insurance companies, that this is really an alternative and not as costly to them.
Mm-hmm.
And we are delighted because it's something that really does work and has strong possibilities.
So it takes it out of the hospital. It's just
Yeah.
as effective, if not more so,
Yeah.
and it's certainly a lot less expensive, I would assume.
Very much so.
What about evening treatment?
Evening treatment is a less intensive treatment, but still several nights a week. And if somebody needs to work and can't fit in the intensive outpatient, they can go to the evening treatment after work.
It's the same thing as the intensive outpatient.
It's not, but it's
help-
not as many hours. It may be
Yeah.
3 hours a week rather than 9 hours a week, and so it's not as intensive. But it does offer an alternative.
And that plus attending an AA meeting
Yes,
is very helpful.
very much so.
What about aftercare?
Aftercare, I have been a part of the intensive outpatient care. Say I've been there for a month, and I really am on the road to recovery, and it's felt that I don't need to do the intensive care. So aftercare is 1 or 2 meetings a week to talk about issues that may still be unresolved for me and the others in the group. But I don't need that intensive reinforcement, and I'll still keep going to AA meetings.
Okay, and what about parent support, adolescent groups?
Well, the adolescent groups we have a wonderful adolescent counselor, Jay Walton, and the adolescents get together a couple of times a week and again talk about the issues that they have and work towards recovery.
So this is support for teenagers and
Yes.
older? Yeah. And what about the parent support group?
Those are usually the parents of those in the adolescent group, but there periodically are parents who really need support and help from Maxwell and will come and become part of a group to help them with their children.
So you help the whole family. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's part of the goal. Obviously, you can't treat something like this, but it's not just one individual. It's a
Absolutely,
whole
and in
family.
fact, something that doesn't appear in our pamphlet, but we were talking about it last week, is the codependent group, and those are families
Could,
and
you know,
significant.
a lot of people don't know what a codependent is, I bet. I mean, could you just give a quick definition?
Let me give an example.
Yeah.
I am an alcoholic, and this is my sister. And we've been together forever, and the terrible alcoholism that I'm experiencing, my sister has had to deal with that. She's had to take me to the hospital, and she has suffered terribly, but there's been no place for her to turn. A codependent group would be a group for my sister.
And actually, they can become as focused on you and on the alcoholic problem so that their moods go up and down and change and everything. They are really dependent. Some become
I think
dependent.
there can be depression, terrible problems. And I think when you're thinking of a family, and say a young family with young children, and if you have an alcoholic parent, those children
are severely affected.
Absolutely.
Are codependents. Yeah. It's not just one individual that's affected.
No, and
by
that's
this,
why we
ever.
have this adult child of alcoholics that is such a buzz
Yes,
group now.
And what about planned intervention? What do you do there? That's a tough one, isn't it?
That's the way it started, though.
Yes.
That's the way the whole thing
Do you
started.
want to talk, because you were in
Well,
it's the same now as it was then.
Is it just that you had explained that earlier?
usually the alcoholic doesn't think he's ill.
Right. Doesn't
And
think he has a problem.
He doesn't think he has a problem. He doesn't think he's causing any problems, and it usually is started by a family member, and the family member will say, I can't stand this anymore. I've got to have help with this person, and we'll call Maxwell Institute, and they will say, we will help you to plan an intervention, and so the whole family will get together, unbeknown to the chemically dependent person, and they will go in and they will talk all about the problems that they're having, and they will be told how to approach the person. And on the day of the intervention then, the person comes in and he's surprised to see his whole family there, or maybe he knows the family's going to be there. But usually, I think, do they still not know?
No, they don't know.
They don't know.
No.
And the family will all start out. They have it all planned with the counselor that's leading the intervention, and the person who leads off will say, you know, I love you very much, but here's what's been happening, and here's how it's affected me. And
so that you're getting across how it's affecting
the other person.
Not blaming him, trying to make him feel better.
No.
This is
absolutely
not
the
at all.
impact on me.
This is what's happening to me as a result of your drinking. And I love you very much, and I really want you to get help. And, you know, it can be a real jerker. It can be a real tearjerker, you know, because it's very, the person that generally will say, oh, okay, what do you want me to do? And they'll get some kind of treatment as a result of that.
So because there's such a group, this person who is chemically dependent can no longer really just deny it. I mean, he's got all these people there. That's probably what the impact of it is the inability to deny it anymore.
Well, and then also I think when the person begins to see how unhappy he's making his family, or she, how unhappy that they're making the people around them.
They begin to take action because they didn't intend to hurt anybody.
Generally.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, that's very important to understand. Just one other thing, you have a seniors program, or you incorporate seniors into helping the clients, or you take it away, Dale?
Well, for a long time, we had a specific program for senior adults, and that kind of fell off. And then we discovered that the seniors in the Bronxville, Eastchester, Tuckahoe area had such rich personal lives that were so scheduled with so many wonderful activities that basically we needed to offer access to our regular non-senior groups, and that it was much easier for a senior to know that at 10 a.m. a group was meeting, instead of trying to find one time in the afternoon to get all the seniors to come. And in fact, our therapists have said that having that wonderful mix in the group really enriches the group and makes for very effective group therapy. So we change back and forth. Because we're small, even though we have 540 individuals we have dealt with in the year 2000, and 8,400 visits, Marcia, after which just boggles my mind. We're still small, and we're able to shift our clinical model based on the need of those who come to us. And we can shift on a dime, which is wonderful. If a new need comes,
you can do that.
Absolutely.
Well, now, I'm sure that many people just listening are curious to know how you charge fees. Is this covered by insurance? Is this astronomical? I mean, how does it work? How do you charge fees?
We charge sliding scale, and most people
based on the ability to pay.
Based on the ability to pay, and in fact, we had when we were talking about a merger. In 1994-95.
With St.
We were talking just merger. Who would we we had 7 offers of different institutions who wanted us. And the one thing that made St. Vincent's stand out in our hearts was they kept saying, we never turn anyone away. We never turn anyone away. And one of our offers came from an institution that kept referring to patients as units of service. And you can see where we were headed.
Right.
And so we don't ever turn anyone away.
And what about if they've been there for 2 weeks and then they run out of money?
Then we assess their income, and they pay what they can pay. And occasionally you'll have somebody who pays $10 or less if that's all they can manage.
Afford.
Medicaid. We have Medicaid clients. We have a lot of clients who have private insurance, and Medicare is not very reimbursing, so that can be problematic.
Right.
But it's done. We have a very sophisticated staff, and they review that, and it's pretty fair, I think.
How big is this staff? I know it has a high degree of expertise.
At this point, we have a new clinic director, Dennis Gorman, who has just joined us last Monday, and you have to go down and meet him, Charlotte. And we have an assistant clinic director, Madeline Venner, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 other counselors and 3 3 office staff who receive the phone calls and are expert in
So there are many
helping.
people here.
Yes, and a community education specialist, Kim Casey, who is extraordinary.
Great.
And
Tell us about
visionary.
tell about a little bit about the community education program. We were just going to touch on that too. What is involved there at this current time? And
Well-
you're not handing out flyers at Lord and Taylor's parking lot anymore, are you?
No, I don't think so. I think that's been a while.
Well, Ruth Maxwell really set the heart of this, set education so firmly in place, and it is central to the mission of Maxwell.
Mm-hmm.
And community education is focused at this point on the schools in Bronxville, Eastchester, and Tuckahoe, and we have a number of other schools outside those communities who have asked for specific programs, and Kim Casey seems to work 16-hour days.
And she goes to these schools
Absolutely.
and gives seminars, or
She gives. She has been working on integrating the Maxwell information into the curriculum. So in the Bronxville school, Maxwell has a program that is part of the elementary school health curriculum. So it's a natural. It's not just a separate message.
Right.
It's a part of everything these youngsters are hearing.
Isn't
And-
that wonderful to have it as a part of the curriculum,
Well,
so that it
the-
makes sense and it? Yes, it could. It's a good way to work it.
It's wonderful.
I hadn't
And-
realized that. Now, there's one other thing that you had mentioned, and that was the Max Train. What is the Max Train?
Well, that's the this training program for teachers and healthcare professionals.
Oh, so you train the teachers too.
Well, originally, Ruth started she did not work with young people in the schools at all.
Mm-hmm.
It was strictly a training the teachers and healthcare professionals, and that's what her original plan was. And she'd go into schools like, she had a big program going in Tarrytown at one point, and they would go in fairly regularly and work with the teachers.
With the teachers. And they do that now with the Tuckahoe, Eastchester, and Bronxville?
I'm not sure
Teachers?
what they do now.
We are restarting a specific teacher training program, and we're hoping to have that up either maybe to do something during the summer. But Max Train has about 25 students who are hoping to go into the field as clinicians.
Oh.
And it is I think a 450-hour program. It's huge. That's given at Maxwell, multiple lectures and classroom exercises, and then an internship is connected with it to help them pass their CAC, Certified Alcoholism Counselor, which is a very tough exam. And in fact, our current clinic director took the Max Train program 10 years ago.
And that's
went
how
off and did other things, and he
then
is
came-
now
and that's how he
has
came
come back.
We could talk about this for a very long time, but we are going to have to end very shortly. I just thought I'd ask where you see Maxwell Institute going in the future. Are there any new areas you want to go into, or just strengthen the current ones you have?
I think there are two areas. We are continually trying to find the key to bringing those who need treatment into treatment. Mm-hmm. And it's still...
It's always the problem, isn't it?
So hard for people to
only
say.
knew that there's help out there.
Absolutely. And that it is, as St. Vincent's has said, the only shame is in not asking for the help.
Right.
And the other area that we're really focused on is having education programs that really work, where we have tracked them and we can see that they have helped young people and adults make healthy choices for themselves and resist some of the temptations out there with alcohol
And they're hard
and
to
drugs.
resist these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
They are. So those are two
Well,
of our many focuses.
that's a wonderful focus, and Maxwell has done so much for this community over the years. I know everyone shares with me our gratitude for all that you have done. And Charlene, thank you so much for joining
thank you for having me
today, and you too, Dale.
Thank you for making us feel so at home.
Oh, well, you are at home, and thank you all very much for joining us too. Goodbye.